for streaming, I guess?
They are streaming, so.
Okay. So I'd like to call to order the City of Escalon Planning Commission meeting for February 11th, 2020. Can we all rise and do a flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next can we do a roll call?
Commissioner Stroman?
Here.
Commissioner Willis?
Here.
Commissioner Sarkozy?
Here.
Commissioner Castellanos?
Here.
Commissioner Danziger?
Here.
Okay, please note all cell phones, pagers, and similar devices need to be set to silent or vibrate mode or turned off unless you are an on-duty emergency responder. And then we have presentations, and unless that has changed, it's none still? Okay. Next, we have the consent calendar. These items are considered routine in nature and will be approved with one motion. We have the minutes from the November 19th, 2019 meeting. Have any comments, commissioners?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from the November 19 meeting.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Abstain from my absence.
Okay. Next, we have the public hearing for project application 19715 for a conditional use permit at 2407 Jackson Avenue.
Thank you, Chair. Before us tonight is a conditional use permit application for an existing business. This is at 2407 Jackson Avenue. It's Backyard Mini Barns. Some history, this business started in 2017. It was originally owned by someone else. It was the Shed Depot, and the city issued them a business license to sell Old Hickory sheds. That's a brand, Old Hickory. And retail sales is permitted in the C2 zone, so they went through staff site review, through building, planning, engineering and fire departments, and the original approved site plan is included as Exhibit C. In 2018, the business sold to a new owner, and they renamed it Backyard Mini Barns. And staff noticed over the years there were some changes to the layout made and the addition of U-Haul rental service. Truck trailer rental is allowed by the zoning code. It requires a conditional use permit, so staff reached out to the business owner, let them know that the changes to the layout and the addition of U-Haul would require some permits, and so the business owner applied for a conditional use permit, and that the U-Haul rental would be ancillary to the shed sales. That's their primary business. A bit more information about the U-Haul aspect of the business. The site would stock approximately 1 to 6, occasionally more, U-Haul trucks or trailers at any given time. U-Haul offers a variety of trucks and trailers, sizes, and it just kind of depends what's on site on who's picked up a vehicle and who's dropped off a vehicle from another site. So it's not always the same types of vehicles that would be there. They would rotate. And images of the different vehicles and some of their specifications is included as Exhibit F. You can see what U-Haul offers. The site has 24-hour drop-off service, and on attached Exhibit D, the business owner identified the locations on the site that the U-Hauls would be stored. Those are highlighted in blue. Along with adding U-Haul rental service, the applicant also wanted to request a modification to the originally approved site layout. Some of the sheds, the metal carports, and then the U-Hauls, they're looking to store them a bit closer to Highway 120 in front of the office and also up along the landscaping. You can see in Exhibit E, site pictures of what the site looked like before the modifications and then after the modifications, just so you can see what the difference is. Staff has some concerns with the aesthetic appearance of the layout modification, the sheds, the carports, the U-Haul vehicles when they're visible from Jackson Avenue. Staff doesn't feel that it improves the quality of the aesthetics of the business and the view along the highway. If Planning Commission agrees with the concerns, you are able to add a condition of approval that limits the location and placement of the structures and the vehicles, either behind the office or along, interspersed along the perimeter of the property with the sheds so that they're kind of mitigated from view. Also, if Commission has concerns about the U-Haul rental, we've seen other sites limit the number of vehicles that can be on site at any given time, also the hours that the vehicles could be picked up or dropped off. If Planning Commission wants to approve the conditional use permit for the U-Haul rental, there's findings that need to be, findings that are required. Those include that the use is necessary and desirable, the use is properly related to other uses and does not cause undue environmental impacts, and that the use does not adversely affect the health or safety of people working and living in the area. Staff conducted the required public outreach, published a public hearing notice in the Escalon Times, and mailed that notice to every property owner and occupant within 300 feet. And we did not receive any phone calls or inquiries in the office about this project. Planning Commission's decision will begin a 10-day appeal period. And if Planning Commission decides to approve this application, the following actions must be taken. You'll open the public hearing, close the public hearing, make the findings for use permits, find the project CEQA exempt, and then consider the approval with conditions of approval proposed below or modified by the Planning Commission. And I'm going to go over a couple of the specific conditions for this project. Number one, the approval of this conditional use permit is to provide the service of U-Haul rentals. And if Planning Commission chooses to make any, you can either accept the proposed layout as the applicant includes as the exhibit, or if you want to see any modifications to their layout, we can include that with that condition of approval. Number three, accessory structure regulations. When the original business opened in 2017, city staff provided them an accessory shed flyer, and we explained to them that they should give that out to any Escalon resident purchasing a shed so that they know what the rules are, what the setbacks are, size limitations. I'm not sure if that information transferred over to the new owner. And I know our accessory rules have changed since that time in 2017. So staff is going to update the flyer, and then a condition of approval is that the owner of the business must give it out to Escalon residents. Number four, Charter reached out to us with a comment. They said depending where they put the sheds, there are some federal clearances that need to happen between their internet utility line and the shed. So depending where the owner wants to put some of these sheds, they would just need Charter to check that the clearances are okay. And then number five, office landscaping. One of our original conditions for the business was that they put these wine barrel pots in front of the ramp of the office and keep plants alive in them. Number five just memorializes that in conditions of approval so that that information doesn't get lost and the pots get removed or the plants die and aren't replaced. That's it for the specific conditions. If you have any questions, staff is here to answer those. I did talk with the applicant this afternoon. Unfortunately, they had an emergency, family emergency, a death in the family, so they flew out to Oregon, so they were not able to be here tonight. I let her know that we would do our best to get through the project, but if there were questions that just couldn't be answered and we needed to make a decision, that the project would get kicked to the next month. So if that's what we have to do, that's what we have to do.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's unfortunate they're not here, because that, I guess certainly my question, would be, you know, these sheds, and it kind of also, pertains to Charter's, comment. You know, the sheds right now, are they, I mean, they're there, they're movable, right? They're just on display, so I guess I'm questioning why Charter is concerned about, almost like an easement when these are, movable structures anyway. But, so I guess with the understanding that they're, easily movable and they could be placed anywhere, I would like to think about having the storage, you know, at the back of the lot, like they have a couple of the spaces. But unfortunately, I think that's the question that only they could answer.
So as in regards to Charter, I'm not sure if the clearance is an at all times thing, or just if they come out to the site and they need to work on it. The sheds are movable, but if Charter is there needing to work on it, I mean, they would have to call in a vehicle to come lift it up and move it, so it's not immediate. I think Charter just likes to have that clear at the time, so wherever she does place it would have to meet the clearance. And maybe in that location, she has to put a shorter shed to meet the clearances, I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure what we're talking about. What kind of shed? Are you talking about the RV storage shed or these wooden sheds?
Any of the sheds. Charter doesn't want any of the sheds within certain clearances of their overhead internet line. The metal sheds are bolted to the ground, so those are not easily movable. Wherever those are placed are kind of a permanent location, because those are bolted. The wooden sheds are relocatable. Those come and go as people buy them.
I was just thinking off the top that it would be probably a good idea to put all of these RV sheds in the rear with U-Hauls underneath them. That way you're killing two birds with one stone. I can see where you might want to have one out front, kind of as advertising. Have they approached you for signs, or?
They haven't reached out to us for any signs.
Okay, well, barring that, I would think that, I wouldn't have a problem with, like they have in the picture, with one of those U-Hauls out front. And I kind of defer to staff on how many of these things should be there based on the size of the lot and the quantities of these sheds. There should be some kind of ratio, I would think. If they've got to have 50 sheds, and they're always going to have 50 sheds, if they sell 10, they're going to bring in 10 more. How that correlates to how many U-Hauls there. And if they put them in the back, you know, I'm not sure in my own mind how to limit that. You know, I don't know how many of the RV sheds they want, and 1 to 6, it can be anything after, you know, you get approved. It could be 20 after that. So I would think that limiting it might be a good idea. Are they going to work on these things there mechanically?
It did not seem like that was part of the intention, but we could put a condition of approval that just memorializes that.
Right.
When they get turned in, it certainly seems like they'd need servicing, either, you know, refueling, cleaning out, something like that. On the one hand, this is a gateway to the community roughly at the city limits. If you have the U-Hauls visible, it doesn't look that attractive, but on the other hand, they want business, and we want them to have business. So what about just having one out front when they're open, and then when they close, you know, make sure they're all on the back, not visible. And if the sign were on the building, you know, maybe not visible when there's a U-Haul truck in front of it, but then when the U-Haul's gone, there's still a sign saying what they have. I like that you're gonna update the flyer, cause we've got so many sheds and carports and things like that that aren't according to code, and we don't wanna foster more of that, so, if we say yes to the metal covers, we need to make sure they're legally, put up.
And they know they gotta be no more than 15 feet in height?
Right, that'll be in the flyer.
Okay, did they know that?
I'm not sure if the new owner knows the regulations for the ones in town.
Okay.
But they could sell sheds that are taller than that are on the site, correct?
Right.
Along with the carports.
When you have, U-Hauls, you have boxes, you have blankets, you have strapping, do they have storage for things like that
Some
in that
U-Haul,
building?
some U-Haul rental places offer the supplies, the packing boxes, packing materials. This is not one of them, at least not at this time. It's just the rental.
And in the application, it said that if you want a size that they don't have, they'll put you in touch. Do they own other locations of U-Haul rentals?
I'm not aware that she owns other locations, but the U-Haul locations work together where if you don't have a size, but maybe your person, another one in Oakdale has it, maybe they'll swap you or you're able to get one from there.
I would imagine U-Haul has a system that tracks all of their vehicles, so they probably go into the system and can identify where a vehicle's at.
Commissioner
So,
Stroman, you've been.
This existing storage shed that's on the back side of the first page E, which is 2019, is that shed or carport bolted already?
The metal shed that has a shed underneath it, that is bolted to the ground.
Okay. And what they're proposing is putting more of those?
No.
No, so they've already modified their layout, so that metal one on the 2019 that has the shed underneath it, in the original layout in 2017, when the original business was approved, they did not have a carport there, that space was vacant. And then to the right side of that picture, there's kind of the open gazebo one, and then the enclosed red one.
Yeah.
There was not sheds or carports in that front area.
Chair, my only comment is, I drive past this business probably twice a day on average, and I will say that it is very clean. It is very well organized. It's not an eyesore, and even with in the proposed plan on Exhibit D, even with 2 U-Hauls sitting out in front of the office, it would not be an eyesore to the community. The spacing of the sheds around the property they actually thought about it and how they were gonna organize it. They just didn't show up and just start putting sheds everywhere. And, I think, I don't know, I don't think that it's gonna turn into a U-Haul parking lot. I mean, at the most, we may have 5 or 6, but as our city manager stated, as soon as U-Hauls come in, they turn around and they go right back out. I mean, it's a really quick turnaround time. I just wish this business would have been here about 20 years ago, but that's neither here nor there. To answer Commissioner Willis's comment about servicing, I don't know the last time you and Mr. Willis drove a U-Haul, but last time I was in a U-Haul, it seemed like they did servicing in 1986. Yeah, it was a beast. But I don't necessarily have any issues with the project at all. I mean, I think it's encouraging the business. And there's a residual aspect to the business that I don't know if my fellow commissioners considered, and that is, when you rent a U-Haul, you're trying to find a place where to drop it off. And if somebody is moving into our community, or somebody moves into Oakdale or on this side of town, they're looking for a place to drop off the U-Haul, and, oh, well, look, I can drop it off here, and that could lead to other business in the surrounding areas, because they're gonna drop off their U-Haul. Oh, well, let's go to Bonnie's and have some pizza, or
Hula's.
let's go to Hula's, or let's, they're gonna have to fill up the truck, so that brings gas revenue into H&M Market. So this, by allowing this business to come in, it not only helps this business, but it also affects other surrounding businesses that I think we need to consider. My only area of concern is the two shed areas on the south side, and actually all those sheds. My only request was that they are respectful of the lot limit lines per the city ordinance. Back fence is 10 feet, correct, Commissioner Danziger?
I don't really see it.
In the city ordinance, we talked about the no structures within 5 feet of a side fence and 10 feet of a back fence. Is that what it is?
Oh, the setbacks?
Yes.
In this situation,
C2, so I don't think there is any.
It wouldn't
yeah,
apply.
Okay.
yeah, it wouldn't really apply. There is a cement wall between Paddock Mobile Manor and the Hickory Shed. When a customer purchases a shed and places it in their yard, they definitely have setbacks to adhere to, but
Okay.
here at the sales lot, they do not.
I'm all for it.
I agree that it's a need perhaps that we have, having trailers. I know people who've used them recently, and when I think of the locations, like one in particular in Reno, that, less than desirable, certainly not something we want to put here, but that's a whole different, situation. But, yeah, this place looks nice, the landscaping's fine, the barrels with the plants, I never see any customers here. But, yeah, could be very, very profitable and fill a need that we have in the community.
Sure beats a dollar store.
Yes.
No.
I have a couple of questions, basically dealing with the same thing. You have a lot size. Right now, the city has not put a limit on how many sheds can be placed on this site, nor have they placed any limits on how many U-Haul trailers, trucks can be placed on the site. Without those two limits, and we have two businesses going on, I would think as the more successful business keeps growing, they will add to that inventory. So I'm just wondering, instead of having no limit on how many, you can't do lot coverage because they're all mobile. I don't want to restrict the business, but again, on the flip side, I don't want to have, an open-ended thing where you don't have any control over how many of either one of those can get placed there.
Are you thinking of setting an amount now?
Well,
And
I
then
don't-
as
I
they
don't know.
sell
This
one,
is-
they can only move
well,
one in and,
The owner's not here to ask, but I'm just thinking that, if I was doing this and I found out that, geez, I can rent more of these, 22-foot trucks if I had more of them here, maybe I don't need so many of these sheds, so I'm gonna move this around, because I think the site plan is not static, it's gonna keep changing, so I'm thinking we might wanna have, I don't know what that number is, I don't know how you figure that out.
Well, my only counter to that, Commissioner Castellanos, is say the U-Haul business takes off and we put a cap on it and say they're only allowed to have 7 trucks on any given time. and the U-Haul business is booming, and they need 10 parked there at a time. Well, then we're hurting the business because then they have to come back and file for another conditional use permit to amend the number of trucks. And that does, in my opinion, that harms the business as opposed to encourages the business.
So in the original, business plan, fire or safety, somebody said something about a certain access area,
Right,
correct?
so if you look at Exhibit E, which is the original approved site plan, fire department required minimum 20-foot drive aisles. And if you look towards the south end
It's
of the
actually
property,
Exhibit C.
oh, you're right, Exhibit C, sorry. Towards the south end, if I can take the mouse, I'll wiggle it. Right here is an access gate that goes kind of behind H&M Market, the gas station.
Right?
Fire department required this 20-foot area to remain clear at all times, so that they would have an entrance off of Highway 120 and be able to exit out a second exit.
Now, that's the original
That's the
plan, so the
original.
proposed one doesn't have that second row of sheds.
Right, they
Yeah.
kind of bunched them up behind the office instead of doing a long one, and they kept an in and out, two entrance exits on Highway 120, so they did a little bit different.
So it looks like 30 sheds in the proposed site plan. Do we want to set a limit?
I think the reason that I brought up the access area was that you could require a limited aisle around that whole property that would help limit the number of sheds that they could do, as long as they left a 20-foot or a 30-foot access around their existing, then that would limit them to whether it would be a shed or a truck.
So they could use their judgment as long as they had that,
Yes.
yeah.
I think that's a really good idea.
Call me crazy, but if you look at Exhibit C, as in Charlie, the original exhibit, that looks way bunched up and sheds on top of each other.
That's what they modified.
And in reality, if you go to what's there now on Exhibit D, it's a lot cleaner. And it looks, I mean, if I was somebody to drive in here,
The flow is better,
Absolutely.
definitely, in the new layout.
I'd drive in here and say, oh, what shed do I want? I'm just gonna take a little loop-de-loop and come around and go down the street.
So we could put a condition in there just to maintain fire code access.
Right, and there is, if you look at condition number 7, use of the property, we could modify that in some way to make it more clear. It already says, use of the property shall be conducted in a way that does not constitute a nuisance to the surrounding neighborhood if fire department, building department, city planner, planning commission, or city council finds at any time that the use of the property constitutes a nuisance or is detrimental to the neighborhood, it can be discontinued or modified. So if they got really cluttered with sheds, if they were encroaching on the 20-foot drive aisles required, we could reach out to them, say you're violating condition number 7, you need to declutter, you need to move these to keep the aisleways clear. We could
So,
use
so
that
we
one.
might specify that our remedy would be to cut the inventory or to relocate
We can add that wording in there,
members
yes.
of the
Mhm.
items in the inventory.
Well, Exhibit D looks like that the gate access is still there.
Yeah.
They have to leave
Correct.
that, yeah.
It is there.
Yeah, so they have 3 ways.
So in actuality, commissioners, they're already going above and beyond what's required in the fire department, because now they have 3 areas of egress, whereas the original condition for approval was only 2. So they're going above and beyond.
Well, has this been Caltrans approved?
Caltrans was notified of the project.
Wow.
We did not receive any
So
responses.
is this a new ingress and egress?
No, those have been existing.
Okay, so, okay, there you go.
They just blocked one of them in the
Okay.
original plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think that if you have that 20-foot access road to all exits, that will limit significantly, whatever they choose to put in their sheds or U-Hauls. There was a concern again by staff that more than 6 U-Haul units might become unsightly And I guess we go back to where they're going to put them. I look at their, D is hard for me, because that's a kid drawing.
The scale is off.
Yeah, and it looks okay, as far as, 6 units there. And I'd hate to, hamstring them if their business turns into more U-Haul than sheds. However, if it gets to be a U-Haul lot there, I'm not sure what that does to the conditional use permit. Did they even, they would need to come back if we limit it to, let's say, 6.
If you limit it to 6, and now they want 10 or 15, they should come back for a use permit amendment. Mhm.
Did they agree to 6?
It didn't come up as far as if you were to limit a number, how many would they need? I asked, how many do you have at one time? She said about 1 to 3. Occasionally we get 5 or 6, depending on the speed of when some are dropped off and when those are relocated to another site. So she said typically 1 to 3 are there, occasionally, up to 6. Depending how business does, it could be more.
So if we were to say limit it to 10, that would give them enough leeway, I would
Some
think,
room.
as a business. And then if they needed to go more, then they would come back.
If you were concerned about it looking like a parking lot or a vehicle storage lot,
Yeah,
the ones that they have interspersed with the sheds are kind of screened because of the sheds, not too big of a concern for staff. The ones that they have behind the office, not visible, not a concern to staff. You could limit the number that are in front of the office, between Highway 120 and the office, so no more than, so she's proposing 2 in front of the office. You could say, you can have up to 15 on site, but no more than 2 north of the office, which is where they would be visible.
So not to split hairs, but we're talking about quantity of trucks. How does the quantity of the trailer rentals figure into that? Because not only does U-Haul rent trucks, if you look at Exhibit F, there's the car hauler rental, the motorcycle trailer rental, the vehicle trailer rental. So,
Well, and the trucks are all different sizes too.
yes.
I'm not sure I want to set a limit. What if the U-Haul business takes off and the shed purchases
Yeah, that's,
slow way down? I'd rather they be in place already to, go with whatever happens, because
I would just limit how many are
And the
along
road
the
frontage.
120.
I would agree. I mean, I think that we don't want to put a cap on it, just something
Well,
visible to the community.
You could do no more than 2 on the north side of the property, and then just limit it in that fashion, and the rest would have to be behind the office.
Well, the rest of it's gonna be taken care of with the 3 accesses out, up in and out of that property.
so in the specific conditions, number 1, as far as modifications to the site layout, we're not really modifying it, except we could say no more than 2 U-Hauls on the north side of the,
North of the office.
north of the office.
U-Haul vehicles, would you want it to apply to the trailers also? Because they do, the trucks, the trailers, the
I would say
vans.
U-Haul.
U-Haul,
Yeah, I mean, because who
Units,
knows what's gonna appeal
vehicles,
to
yeah.
who?
Right.
As long as it's not too unsightly. And then number 3, you're gonna be working on the new flyer.
right?
I would say no more than 2 trucks. Because trailers are, I mean, there might be a niche for people needing a trailer to go up the hill. And if the trailers are just sitting on 120, is that really unsightly? I don't know.
There's also an attractive nuisance to trailers. You got a truck is locked up, a trailer can be stolen pretty easily. So I would think that you wouldn't want to put that out front. You might put them in the back. It'd be harder to get to. It wouldn't stop anybody that was determined, but it would be quicker to access that area from 120 if they're in the front. So I would go with the 2 trucks you know, of whatever size that they were going to use.
So even though there's a cement berm in the front, you're thinking they could back it out and take it?
A trailer?
Yeah,
I think if you talk to Ed Alves, you'll realize
Yeah.
that they could take a trailer from anywhere.
And I would think they would probably want to put a box truck out in front. I mean, that's good advertisement.
Yeah.
Much more than a trailer is.
okay.
I've never talked about U-Hauls as much in my entire life.
And I've used them.
I think we all have.
Don't ever drive the 26-footer over the Altamont. You'll be hating life.
In regards to the sheds north of the office, so like Exhibit E,
Well, the gazebo isn't bad, but the sheds don't look very, they block the whole office.
are you okay with sheds, gazebos, carports in front of the office?
I think it needs to be something you can see through to know that there's an office there.
Mm.
Well, I'll tell you what, though, I'd much rather look at that shed than the portable office, that's for sure. This beautiful redwood stained shed, well, it isn't the new thing, she sheds. This could be a she shed as opposed to a drab gray office. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we're maybe getting too, thinking about getting too nitpicky. You know, it's a shed, it's zoned appropriately, as long as in my opinion, as long as the clearances are okay, the sight lines getting in and out and merging back onto 120, I think that's appropriate to not put any conditions about what type of shed can be in front of the north side.
Do we have to have a public hearing about this?
And I would think if they're advertising off of 120, they'd put their primo-looking shed out there. To draw people in. Same with the truck.
So, should we open up the public hearing? So it is 7:37, and we'll open up this project to the public hearing if any of the public has any comments. None being taken, we will close the public hearing at 7:38. So I would propose a motion that,
Do you have comments, Chris? Amongst us?
oh, I thought that's what we were doing.
Oh.
Any other
Oh, I
comments?
thought that was staff questions. No?
Oh.
Okay.
No.
I'm sorry.
Okay, well, we'll go to Commissioner Dancer, any additional?
Well, I just want to make sure that we have everything done as I've written it. We're going to have a new flyer. It's going to indicate size, I guess, of the carports. Is that right?
Well, and location,
Regulations,
setback.
yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
zoning regulations.
So we'll have that new flyer to the owners. No mechanical servicing of any of the equipment on site. There's a maintenance of 20 feet fire access lanes.
We can add that to number 7, that they must maintain 20-foot aisles required by the fire department and keep the aisle clear to the southwest gate.
Is 20 feet sufficient, or would you, I'm just looking at these pictures thinking they have more like 25 feet, so if you're looking and you like the way it is now, my concern would be if you reduced it to 20, you may get into a situation where it's a little more cloudy. I don't know.
Well,
Fire department required the minimum of 20, but the site currently has more than 20.
Right,
So I think that we need to say a minimum of 20.
okay.
They can go bigger.
Well, and,
Or you could say a single row. That's what they have right now, is a single row along the back.
well, I'm sure if they have 20-foot minimum, that has to do with the turning radius of the engine.
It does,
Right.
right.
So if that's what they say,
That's what they required, that's what they asked for.
Then I think we ought to give them what they asked for. And then the 2 U-Haul trucks or units to the north side of the lot, we'll limit it to 2. That's what I have. Does anybody have anything else?
Why do we have to limit the north side to, oh, that's along,
That's the
That's the
advertising.
Highway 120 side. And trailers were okay. It was just the trucks, limiting it to 2 trucks. Trailers were okay.
Now, you've got office landscaping, what about the landscaping and the beds? Is that in,
So potted plants in front of the,
is that a condition?
actually, it's already there.
It's
If you
already
look at-
built in.
Okay,
The one along the frontage and then 5 feet along the sides is existing, and it's
Okay.
got the curbs around it.
because it looks kind of weedy.
It is a bit weedy. We could mention it's time for
Green
a
weedy.
landscape.
Yeah.
isn't that one of the conditions that you have to maintain your existing?
Okay, now we're really splitting hairs, talking about weeds.
Now we're in the weeds?
It's almost spring, it is weed time. We should get weed
If anybody
killers out.
needs any weeds, I have some that I can donate.
You keep them yourself.
Okay.
Any other comments? Okay. With that, is there any motions? Commissioner Danziger summed it up quite well, but I will motion that we approve this conditional use permit with the following conditions. One being the maintaining a minimum of 20 feet clearance per fire code in the access. And limiting the number of trucks on the north side to 2 at any one time.
And no working on vehicles on the site.
And no working on vehicles on the site.
Is it redundant to put the new flyer in there as well, or is that just gonna happen?
We have that in there, that's number 3.
Okay.
Yeah. And so whoever makes a motion would need to make the findings for use permits and find the project CEQA Class 1 exempt.
Okay, and then I'll add in make the findings as required per section 1756.030, findings for use permits, and we will find the project CEQA Class 1 categorically exemption under section 15301.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those against, say nay. Motion passed.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have, consider making a recommendation to the Escalon City Council to adopt an ordinance amending chapter 17.11.040, a list of permitted uses and uses permitted by conditional use permit by zoning district, and chapter 17.81, definitions.
Thank you, Chair. During the last year or so, city staff has had multiple citizens inquire about opening up tasting rooms, breweries, pubs, et cetera, in the city. Since these types of businesses are becoming more popular in our surrounding cities, city staff proposes adding these use types to the list of permitted uses and uses permitted by conditional use permit by zoning district. As such, city staff has also prepared a definition for each use type, so it may be discussed with potential business operators. City staff is also proposing that all use types added to the municipal code require a conditional use permit application if desired in the C2 zoning district, which is our community commercial, which is primarily located along McHenry Avenue, Highway 120, Main Street, and some other additional streets in the downtown area. These uses would be permitted in the M1 and M2 zoning districts, which are our industry districts, or industrial. And would still be required to obtain site plan and building permit approvals. Each type of business added to the list of uses is required to have a permit from the California Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control in order to legally operate. An additional item staff is requesting to amend is that contracting businesses be allowed to operate in the C2 zoning district and be approved at staff level if all of their activities remain indoors. In the event that this the use proposes or conducts business operations outside of the building, a conditional use permit should be required. So if you look at our redlining, under industrial uses, we have industry limited, and what we are proposing is to remove contracting out of that listing and add it separately. And then we're giving, under the C2 zoning district, C10, with the note 10 being added as may be approved at staff level if operating indoors only. If operation of business is proposed outside of building, conditional use permit is required. Specifically, we're hoping that this would help with outdoor storage activities or things that are being left outside. A couple of the businesses or potential businesses that are looking to come into town or open are areas of town where they're currently one building and they're looking to divide the building into separate units. So if you're moving into a piece of building that's only, 300, 400 square feet, they're gonna be limited in size. And most likely because they're just renting that space, they're not gonna have a lot of outdoor storage. So the review of that type of project is going to be more minor than if we have somebody that's buying a whole property and creating a business on that property and having all that outdoor space. And so we're hoping this would help, specifically with contracting businesses. We have had inquiries in that area where obtaining a use permit seems extensive if they're just wanting to rent a suite in one of the buildings downtown. So it's specifically to address if they're going to have everything indoors. They could provide the floor plan and be a floor plan to staff with any permits that they need and obtain some type of approval at staff level. But if they were exposed out into the public, had issues related to noise, odor, environmental concerns, those type of things, that they would still come to Planning Commission for the use permit. And then under other, we added a couple other definitions there. Artisan beverage maker, brewery large, brewery micro, brewery small, brew pub, brewery tap or tasting room, craft distiller, winery, winery micro, and winery tasting room. And as you can see in the proposed sections, of course, they would not be allowed in any residential zoning districts. The use permits would be required for C1 and C2 districts. C2 and CM districts. We do not have any C1s at this time in town. And then also permitted in our industrial zoning districts, which are the M1, M2. And as you look further into the items, I actually should have put all the definitions in red, but they're in black. These would be all the definitions added, and these definitions are pulled directly from ABC's definitions. And we did look at a couple other cities to see what they have. Specifically, what we do is, in those definitions, is advise what type of license is required through ABC, because some of the people who do inquire are not sure what type of license would be required. And of course, if you're looking at opening a business like that, the first place staff would send you is to ABC to find out what would be required, and at least providing in these definitions gives a description. Defines what is large versus small versus micro, and then also identifies the type of license they would need to require, so that when they go to ABC or they want to look it up or do some research themselves, they would know where they would qualify or what definition they would fall under. And if you have any questions or need any additional feedback or want to make any changes?
I like going second.
Have we,
Sorry.
have we discussed this at all with PD?
Not at this time, but I can, and provide any feedback that they have to the city council upon recommendation.
I think it would help just to make sure that they're.
So they would be under use permit, so anything that comes forward, the use permit would definitely be sent to the police department and other agencies for review. So at that time, if it was project-specific, which it would be in most cases for anything alcohol-related, they would be advised of that project, and what that project is proposing would also be able to provide feedback at that time as well. But I can definitely reach out to them.
I mean, I don't see Budweiser starting to roll into Escalon
No,
anytime
no.
soon, but.
And if they did, they'd be in industrial, because they're much larger, so.
What's the next size up from brewery large? Mega?
I think it was beer manufacturer. Which I did consider adding that in there, and I'm thinking, I don't think we have to worry about that coming to town. Right now, it's basically having something to be able to tell people. Right now, we don't have anything in our code related to any of those types of uses. And so it's basically no, because we don't have anything to follow, where at least this would put it in process to be used as a conditional use or to move forward as a use permit.
Is Nico still open?
I don't believe so. Not here, not in town, no.
Have you seen any of these type of facilities at all in your life?
Just the few in Oakdale
Yeah.
that they have, yeah.
In Mountain View, years ago, there was a Lockheed employee that decided he wanted to distill peach schnapps. And like this city here, we had no experience with it whatsoever. So we took a field trip to San Jose, where they do massive bottling and fire protection systems and all kinds of things. This person set up a business in a strip mall, and he didn't make the mash there. He had it delivered. And most alcohols start out as sour mash. And if you've never smelt that, you're going to get a lesson you'll never forget. It is gagging. And so my thought here is, how close are you to residential? Are we going to allow somebody that wants to create something of that nature, because there's going to be odor complaints. When you're making, you're distilling, you do have that process. And if you've never been to one, it's hard for you to know. I was at the site when the truck pulled up, put the mash into one of his stainless steel tanks, and the people next door had an office building, and everybody's out. They all head out to the street because it's just overwhelming until they get the lid back on that. I don't know if a Type 74 license from the alcohol beverage and so forth deals with fire suppression systems. I would think that would be massive, you know, when you're distilling alcohols and what have you. And we're not talking about wine tasting here, you know. I'm all for this as long as the proper controls are there,
Yeah.
and we don't impact the neighborhood. You know, I guess my overall comment is that.
So,
And-
I mean, again, it's all
It's all gonna
primarily
be use
conditional
permit.
use permit.
So if they're building from the ground up, a large, and we don't have a lot of buildings in town that would be that large at this point. So at that point, if they're going for a craft distiller, they'd probably build their own building, and that's gonna bring in all new environmental. We'd end up doing an initial study addressing any smell or odor concerns. That would be a part of the project, which we still do a lot of CEQA stuff. But the smaller ones that maybe don't have that large of an impact, they'd still have the use permit, and at that point, when we put our stuff out to the agencies, we'll get feedback. And ABC's is gonna probably, obviously, be on our list of agencies that we would reach out to because it's related to that. They would probably be the ones that would tell us, you should, you know, check for this, or our experiences for that, and they'll probably end up providing us that type of feedback on those projects.
Yeah.
But it would be something, and we do it with a lot of the projects now with types of businesses. If you're backed up to residential, we let them know that that's existing residential, they have potential. And then, you know, they have priority over what's going to be put there. You have to be 20 feet away. There's certain impacts that you may cause that you're going to have to either show us how you would go about mitigating them, or you're not gonna be able to go into that location. And we would be able to figure that out through the use permit.
Has somebody
Awesome.
approached the city?
Oh, yes, we have Had a few different ones, yeah.
And exactly what were they looking to do?
We've had a wine tasting room, and we've had a distillery.
Well, no problem with a tasting room, but, you know, with the distillery, I would suggest you take a field trip. You know, nothing's like, you know, eye contact and talking to the people that are around it and that kind of thing, seeing what kind of setbacks they have. Other than that, I don't have a problem with, you know,
Yeah.
any of this.
Commissioner Danziger, when you noted that the people came out of the office building, did they come out of the office building because of the smell?
Oh, yeah.
Or were they looking for free samples?
No. I guarantee you, they weren't there for free samples.
And to kind of answer, I don't mean to answer your question, but anything related to fire protection would be tied to the building code. So depending on the occupancy rating of the building, whether it's A occupancy or a C occupancy, the building code would kick in.
I understand,
of
but
fire
distilleries are
protection?
kind of on their own. And when they were going big back in the 90s, there was a huge fire in San Francisco on a pier. There was a couple of craft distillers that were in a pier. There was no fire suppression system. San Francisco let them go in. They burnt the whole pier down. And it was right after that, this gentleman wanted to open up a distillery in Mountain View, so we were a little excited. And, you know, we took our time, we did our homework, you know, made sure all of that was in place ahead of time. And he was very small, you know. He wasn't huge. Probably made 10,000 gallons a year, you know. But you look into those things.
Sure, definitely.
60,000 barrels is a lot of pints of beer.
Seems like it's been a couple of months since you brought up the fact that somebody had made contact about bringing in a business like this. And in the meantime, I think I've heard about some new businesses in Ripon, either coming into place or them being approached as we were. And I hope they didn't go there because we hadn't progressed this far here.
And that's why we're bringing it forward, because we've had more than one inquiry on it, and we don't, like what we did a year and a half or 2 years ago, we made adjustments to our municipal code, because at that point, depending on the type of business, we were turning away certain types of businesses and not providing them that opportunity to prove that they could mitigate issues. So at least in this case, they would be able to come forward to Planning Commission, you know, and if they're willing to open that business and be able to move forward, we would actually be able to do something with it instead of just turning them away for lack of not having anything.
It'd be really nice to have a brew pub here.
We get requests for that a lot, yeah.
Yeah, one other, are you adding?
You would.
Yeah, I just want to see if they're doing this
The
one.
beer making merit match.
So I appreciate everybody's comments. I don't have anything to add on this point, any expertise on it, minus the tasting, I suppose. So, let's see, so we'll open it up to the public hearing also for this.
Before you do that, there was another item that staff has been discussing with other people that have been coming in, inquiring about another type of business. If you look at your first page on page 2 of your red lines, that section under industrial uses lists industry limited and then has the uses such as, you know, we're removing the contracting, but it has equipment repair, limited manufacturing, machinery repair, those type of items. We have had some businesses approach us looking to do some type of equipment repair. We had one that inquired that is interested on being located on Highway 120. And then we did have one that inquired about being located on McHenry. So it got staff thinking. We recently updated our truck routes in our general plan and our municipal code, changing them. At one time, they were just about every street in town, and now we've limited those to Highway 120 and McHenry Avenue.
Brennan.
Yeah, yes. Brennan 120, all along the highway, and then Escalon below to headed north, and McHenry Avenue headed south out of town. I'm sorry?
Not Brennan.
Brennan's not a truck route. We
Oh, I'm
just
not thinking
allow
of,
them-
I'm just thinking it's Highway 120, yeah.
I'm gonna get out there.
It's not technically
It's
a
not
truck route.
technically, yeah. And so the item that came up of concern when we were thinking about that is those type of businesses, equipment-wise, the type of equipment that they were looking to move into those areas weren't small appliance equipment or tiny equipment. They were large pieces of equipment that would need large vehicles or transportation to be able to pick them up and drop them off. And those type of businesses, their primary use was going to be rental, and so it would have been excessive where the person that we had spoke to a few weeks ago, his business would only be equipment repair, and so numerous times throughout the day it would be pickup, drop off, a big truck coming to pick up a big piece of equipment and hauling it off. And it would be something that would be daily, numerous times a day, primary business. And so we were looking at asking the commission whether or not they would want to recommend a change to the council regarding equipment repair, that we create a C11, which would be a conditional use permit, and then add a note at the bottom advising that if that type of use would need to have direct access to an actual truck route. Not taking away from deliveries. Obviously, if you have trucks that are making deliveries in town, they're able to drive on our regular roads that are not designated as truck routes to make those deliveries, but deliveries aren't as frequent, happen on occasion, maybe weekly, maybe bi-weekly. For uses where that primary use is going to be equipment rental, constant all throughout the day during business hours, on the weekends, those type of things, excessive, that they would have direct access. And that's something we're posing. If you want to,
What's the name of the company?
I don't know if I should.
Was it United Rental?
No.
No, it's
was it?
one that's located in Oakdale right now, and they're looking to expand. They're running out of space, and so they were inquiring about moving along the 120. The area that they wanted it's obviously vacant right now, and so they'd have a lot more
Where?
in the Liberty Business Park area that we've designated Liberty Business Park.
Okay.
Obviously, he had some other concerns regarding infrastructure and connections that would need to be addressed as well.
They're willing to do that?
I haven't heard back since we discussed about that, but it did get staff thinking, this is something that we should probably,
Well, we don't want them to go into an area that we're drawing these big trucks onto our more residential or smaller streets.
Right.
So,
they should have that direct access to be able to pull out onto 120 or McHenry Avenue and not drive through town.
How big of equipment are you talking?
Well, that was a,
construction equipment, right?
erectors and heavy
Cranes?
construction cranes. I mean, he has very heavy, large equipment that would be, obviously couldn't be driven off. It'd have to be towed or moved or transported. And so when he was indicating that would be the type of use, we all kind of discussed it afterwards, because we were also trying to figure out how we would be able to have him be able to locate there, given his infrastructure constraints in that area. And it was, that's some large stuff, and if you have people frequenting there all the time, I mean, at least he's off on the highway, it might be a little bit easier, but if you're coming through different parts of town excessively, it's gonna make things difficult.
Yeah, but on 120, 2 lanes, and you've got somebody slowing down to make a turn to get in, it makes sense that maybe on McHenry, where you've got 4 lanes, and traffic could still go by.
Yeah.
But are we saying C1 or C2 or CM or what?
I would probably want to do that in all the Cs. C1, CM, and C2, if
But-
possible.
My only concern about doing that is if we say okay, then when it goes to city council, there are a few city council members that will feel like we are prohibiting businesses as opposed to encouraging businesses. And I'm afraid that they'll squash it, because they'll say, what, you're adding just another layer of bureaucracy to keep businesses from coming into Escalon as opposed to promoting business.
Well, they can always do that.
Yeah.
we're here looking at the codes and what have you, and if they want to get political, then that's their purview. Setbacks, I mean, we don't have anything like that here. How far off the road would they have to be, and how close to the nearest, you know, I don't like C. I think industrial is something that this belongs in.
So originally, those type of uses were all no about 2 years ago, and we had recently, that was one of the
In
ones that
C,
we,
or no, or,
that whole industrial use, industry limited, contracting, equipment repair, that was all no in the C2 at one time, and we had updated that to use permit to provide people that opportunity to be able to present something to planning commission and allow for conditions to be applied to the project to, in order to operate. So we've moved, we've progressed since then, that we're allowing people to entertain putting things, those type of businesses in the C2. They were no before. But yeah, this just came up in dealing with that project, and then we had another project coming up. We have had, we haven't had any equipment repair on the ones that are moving right now.
My recommendation would be, let's
It is
see,
direct access, yeah.
let's see how serious these people are. And if the people are serious about it, then as planning commission, we can talk about it. But I don't mean, we don't want to say no, that's
Yeah.
for sure. But at the same time, I don't want to create more work for you guys if a business is just gonna
yes,
shine you on.
Well, if we don't put it in there, they'll come to us and,
They'll come to you anyway on a use permit.
you know, the corner of Catherine and McHenry.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sorry, Mr. Mayor, but that would be a good location for something like that.
McHenry and Catherine, okay.
Oh,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Across from Hilliard.
That's Spivak, property, is he still on that?
That's
No.
Countrywood and McHenry. Catherine and McHenry's a little
Catherine.
farther down, where
Okay.
quality
near
control is.
Hilliard,
Where
Okay,
American.
That
Chevy
Naragis?
dealership used to be.
okay, yeah, the.
Friendly Chevrolet used to
Yeah.
be there. Yeah, so maybe leaving it the way it is and then just addressing it when we're presented with it.
Yeah, that's fine. We just figured it would be now would be the time to bring it up, since we did recently change the truck routes, and so that wasn't something that we thought of at the time when we made those changes. And so now that it came forward, and we happen to be in this portion of the code. But yeah, it can definitely be addressed on an individual basis.
let's get back to this.
So let's open up the public hearing for what we just discussed about the ordinances. Any comments from the public? All right, so please state your name and address.
Good evening, Derek Webb. Currently, I live in Riverbank, but I'm exploring options potentially for the end of the year of opening up a tasting room in the C2 area. So I'm just coming to address that and say that, you know, I would appreciate consideration for being able to have a wine tasting room in that kind of area, so.
Do you have one now?
I do not have one, no. I'm working with a winery that's under development out in the county limits out on 120, and partnering with them to make the wine out there, and then I'm looking at just doing the tasting room in town, kind of, you know, so.
What was your name again, sir?
Derek Webb?
Derek, I wish you all the best.
Ditto.
Thank you.
What's the name of the, have you came up with a name, or are you still exploring that?
That hasn't been decided yet either, so it's,
What are you currently making?
currently I've made some Cabernet from Napa area. My primary goal is just to source premium grapes for a decent quality to give the consumers a premium wine for a reasonable price and provide an atmosphere where it's enjoyable and someplace to hang out in town, and just provide wine and like meat and cheese, charcuterie kind of boards, and just
How
have fun.
big of a room are you looking at?
The space I'm looking at is about a 1,500 to 1,700 square foot piece.
Is there something like that open in town, existing, or you're gonna build it from,
It's under development.
the building's under development?
It's not developed at this time, but
Yeah.
yeah, there's plans.
There's plans coming.
Can I make a request?
Sure.
Can you put a bocce ball court in the back?
I was thinking fire pit.
I'll second that.
I'll be your best customer, along with my wife.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyway,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Okay, so we'll close the public hearing at 8:10.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to provide a recommendation as proposed to Escalon City Council to adopt the ordinance amending chapter 17.11.040 with the list of permitted uses and uses permitted by conditional use permit by zoning district and chapter 17.81 definitions. And wish Mr. Derek all the best luck in the world
Second that.
with the bocce ball court in the back.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those against, say nay. Motion passed. On to administrative matters.
I believe I just had one item. We obviously hold our meetings at 7 o'clock. That can be changed with a simple amendment of an ordinance. And so putting it out to Planning Commission, if you were open to considering starting at 6:30, at 6 o'clock, or if you would like to remain at 7 PM. It's just something that we can propose to change if you like.
So I would be open to it, but probably wouldn't want to do it before 6:30.
Okay.
Yeah, it's gotta be open to the public, and
Of course,
that's what
yeah.
this is all about.
Yeah.
I'm reluctant to move it, even though it would be easier on staff. I mean, you guys gotta hang around for another couple hours.
Was city council gonna change theirs? Be nice to be consistent with them.
They brought that up not too long ago. but-
Yeah, at that time, they had people from the audience that didn't want it to be changed. We're a little different.
We do have one city meeting that starts at 6:30. That's the Recreation Commission.
We would match another commission, yeah, so.
Can we like do our own thing and start it at like 6:28?
And it's up to you. If you're not interested in doing that, that's fine. We decided to put that out there just because our last meeting that we had before we had the 2 off was, we started it an hour early, but still went a long time. And so we're thinking, well, if we started early like that all the time, maybe it wouldn't be as long, so.
Would we have the flexibility to change it back if there is, outrage from the citizen?
Yeah, yes, you would, yeah.
And can that be, I know you put out a notice ahead of time. Can it change month to month? I mean, it sounds kind of silly to do that, but you want it consistent, but. Is
Well,
that an
it's
option?
by ordinance that
Yeah.
the time is set,
Mm.
so you would have to change the ordinance if you were going to change
Okay.
the time.
And
You can-
council's gonna have to approve that, right?
Correct.
They may just turn it down anyway.
I think it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Okay. I mean, and this is something I can ask them at Monday night's meeting as well, and if they just flat out say no, then we won't even pursue it. But if you are okay with 6:30, I can ask them if they'd be okay with 6:30, and if they are, then we can move forward with the ordinance.
I'm okay with you asking them the question, and don't tell them we said anything.
No, that's fine. Okay.
Watching right now.
And so that was 6:30?
Too late.
6:30
Yeah,
was it? Okay.
Yeah,
6:28, which one? No, I'm just kidding.
6:28:50.
And everybody would be able to make it here at 6:30. We don't want to inconvenience anyone. Everybody would be able, okay. Okay. If you see me after the meeting, I survived. No.
Okay, so at this time, matters presented from the audience. Any other comments from the audience? Okay, thank you. And move on to staff communications.
We're just chugging along. We got a few different projects moving forward. The project downtown, the Lear project or Lear Village, is just about done with civil improvements. We still need a final map that needs to be completed within the next 6 months, and they are having their permits for structures currently reviewed. So we'll see if we can get that moving a little quicker. Trying to,
Are they still paying $2,500 a month?
they are, yes, in penalties, yeah. We've just been busy, and we've had some code enforcement inquiries regarding some substandard housing in town, and so we've been moving forward with those. So if you hear any rumors that we're shutting people's houses down, I mean, it's with good reasoning, just in case. Any other projects that we should put out there? Oh,
We are
big,
having a March meeting.
we will be having a March meeting. We currently have 2 projects that will be on that meeting, that are currently out for public review or agency review. We did confirm with the owners of Big Boy that that's in escrow, so we should see some movement in the next few months, regarding that location.
Again, they're putting a service station across the street, or is it in that parking lot?
The last time we had talked to them, they were going to put it in that parking lot, but we have not seen a site plan since then.
That'd be
So,
interesting.
we were recommending purchasing the lot across the street, for space. We don't know if that's happened at all, but it is in escrow right now, so it will be transferring over to Orlando's.
I don't know where they're gonna,
Paddock Manor's gonna be very excited about that, cause they really have been missing that store.
I just can't see a fueling station in that parking lot. Just, there won't be any parking.
Yeah,
Just the right-hand turn's gonna swap right through the middle of that thing, and it's,
what we're thinking might possibly be proposed is that they'll be putting parking where that taco truck is currently located, cause we're assuming that the taco truck will need to relocate at some point when that business reopens, because they're going to be serving their own, food and lunches and sandwiches and
but
stuff
even
like
that, with that, Big Boy packed that parking lot,
Yeah,
you know, with or without that taco truck, and, I just don't see a fueling station there. That would be quite curious.
yeah, and we'll just have to see how that works out.
It'll be another project with tight parking, Escalon. Get a lot of those.
That's it.
So, just to let the commission know, some of you, should have saw that we are gonna have a community meeting on Thursday at the community center. We may not be able to park. I'm pretty sure we're not gonna be able to park in the parking lot. There should be pavement there, but it'll be too soon to park in the parking lot. But, the meeting is primarily regarding the Measure S that's on the March ballot for public safety, half-cent sales tax, so.
Is there gonna be anything else? Because I've already voted for it, so.
Well, I mean, that's primarily what the meeting is, but it will be open to any other comments from the
Okay.
public too, so.
Very good.
Thank you.
And it's at 6:30 too.
Okay, commissioner, commission communications. Start this in?
So I know that I'm sometimes a jokester, but in all seriousness, do we have any idea when Lear Village is going to be done? Enough said. It's just dragging, it seems like it's dragging on and on and on and on and on. Whatever. Okay.
It's progressing much more than it was originally. I mean, we have staff that's going out there just about 2 to 3 times a week now, getting inspections. So, I mean, there is activity, things are getting done. But yeah, it's not,
And when did that
it's not
close?
as
When did that close escrow?
March of about 2 years ago now.
March, April of 18.
Yeah, so it's going on 2 years.
They really backburnered that project. They must have other things going on.
I think it was just majority, like, funding. Because our restrictions or our practices for your public improvements are that you either have to bond for the work or complete that work prior to being able to move forward on the project. And at that time, there was difficulty bonding for it. And so a lot of time has been spent getting all of those civil improvements completed so that he could move forward with his map.
Yeah, I remember that.
The only other thing I have is Commissioner Danziger. I don't know if you happen to notice or not, but what's the name of is it Show Off Motorsports? They definitely did some improvements. They put a little sign up that said, "Thanks to Commissioner Danziger." But it actually looks really good. And so
Is that engineered properly?
It's been inspected.
Are you
and
referring to the
reviewed.
parking lot?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it has.
I looked at the permit fees from Ms. Trio's report to the council was what, 17.5? It took to the permit for that
That's
slab.
not the fee that they paid, that's their value of the project.
Right, that's not the fee that they paid for the permit, but that's the value of the project.
Right, that's what they
Valuation.
valued their project at.
I know that when we were kicking that around, and you were saying, you know, all the things that they might have to go through to get that in there, that I think that 150,000 was thrown around as a number of possibilities. So I was curious as to if it met all the engineering standards that the city was hoping them to meet. And it was quite a bit less than what was kicked around at that meeting.
we'll find out during the first rain.
Yeah.
You, anything else?
Best of luck to Derek.
Commissioner Wills?
Happy Valentine's Day to everybody. That's all I have.
And anniversary.
Okay, happy
Yeah.
anniversary.
Commissioner Danziger?
Yeah, a while back, Diane sent us all an email about micro enterprise home kitchen operations. I read that, and do we need to know anything about that, or is that coming, or?
It hasn't moved forward yet through the county. We just got an email from the county that they're still working on it. It's not the city individually who opts in or opts out of that. The county does that as a whole. So they are still soliciting from the cities in the county on everybody's feelings about it.
So if they opt in, we're obligated to allow?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
I believe so,
Yes.
yes.
I read their concerns, and they seem pretty legitimate.
Mhm. And we provided a letter with our concerns as well, and which further elaborated on their concerns. So,
Okay. That's it for me.
Commissioner Castellanos?
We're talking about truck routes. I take Brennan to go home quite often, where there's a really big sign that says no trucks. And I have followed some really large trucks through Escalon. What is the resource, or what's the process to notify the city of double axle trucks going down Brennan?
I mean, it would be a law enforcement that would need to issue the citation on them.
So do I take a picture of their license and come on into the city and say, hey,
I don't know if they can issue a citation based on that.
okay, so just let them drive by?
You can have your
Well-
phone connected to your Bluetooth system, so you're not using it with your hands, and you call police
Mine's all-
non-emergency
mine's
number.
all hands-free. But if
You
I'm,
can also, if you're seeing it consistently at a certain
seen
time
it.
of the day,
I've seen it twice, and I was thinking, well, what are where they're going? Cause they're not picking up nuts, cause this looked like something should go down 120 and then right on Ullery, if that's where they were going.
It looks The ones I've seen look like they're just trying to bypass the traffic lights and head on down to Alray and make a right.
That's what I'm
I
saying.
mean, if you're noticing like it's being consistent about a time of day or something, then we can pass that information along to the officers. And if they're available, then they can try to monitor that.
Okay.
I mean, unfortunately, there's not enough officers to be able to watch all the speeding and all of that and answer calls, but if they're aware of issues in areas, then they do try and cover that.
Well, that, Alray will get, or Brennan will get beat up with, that asphalt's not constructed, those big trucks.
Who pays for that road? And,
The city pays from the highway to our city limits.
okay, well, from 120 to Alray, going north and south.
So, on Brennan, from the 120 to right where those delineators are, is the
Used to
city.
be. They're not there anymore.
They're not?
Haven't been there for a long time.
Well, right where the last house is built.
Yeah,
You have
On
the
the-
orchard on your.
on the east side.
But that's a city deal, it's not part of the
Correct.
LLD.
So the county then takes over from there up to Olray. We have a small section of Olray on this side. That
I
way.
understand that, I'm just wondering if these big trucks tear up the road in city limits, that's right next to the Bellaterra LLD, are we responsible for the road?
The LLD does not take care of streets, no.
Good. Those guys do tear it up.
I have nothing else.
Mr. Chair, I forgot, I have 2 items. One is, this goes to the city council, but if, in our next communications with Amazon about their planes flying overhead, can we please, also ask them to, when their trucks are driving through our streets, to kindly lower the music, because past couple of days I have been in my house, in my living room, and can hear the bass thumping out of an Amazon vehicle. Twice. Second thing is, Tammy, do we have any update from the whole SSJID PG&E thing?
In regards to them taking over the power?
Yes.
No, it's still sitting in the court system.
Okay.
Did you read it, Modesto B? PG&E's going for a rate increase?
Go solar.
They have multiple rate increases before the CPUC, and they're constant. I mean, I am so blessed to have MID, even though they're not a very well-run organization, but they're better than PG&E. By the way, MID just lost a lawsuit by the Citizens Taxpayer Group because they were funding the farmers' water with the profits from the electrical side, and they've been doing it forever, and they always thought it was their right. Well, they found out that it wasn't their right, and now it's in the penalty phase of what they've got to pay back or how they're going to adjust rates. There hasn't been an MID rate increase to customers since 2012. That's how long this lawsuit's been going. So it's nice to be sitting back and just shaking my head and sorry for all the people that are on PG&E paying $400 or $500 a month, so that PG&E can have corporate jets and a nice office in San Francisco. And the second largest law firm in the state.
Okay, 2 things for me. First, as I was coming up tonight, certainly encouraged by all the RVs back there. That's quite a storage facility now. So that's great for the city. And then secondly, any update on the storage yard behind the hardware store? They did a little presentation.
Wentworth or?
Yeah. It's probably three meetings ago.
Yeah, they've gone through plan review. They're close to final map. We haven't heard from them in a couple of months, so we've reached out to them to see if there's anything that's holding them up that we can help with.
And is the iron storage gone now?
Oh,
Behind the lumberyard
Yeah,
there?
behind the lumberyard?
Yeah, they did clean that up,
Okay.
so.
Oh, yeah, They were kind of digging for straws when they were here.
I don't know, we don't know what direction they're going.
They still own the building, that little building?
The house
They
that's
purchased the
there.
house on the back.
Yeah, they still own the house, and our understanding is they're actually purchasing the property now from the Schmidts.
Oh.
So, I don't know what we don't know what their intentions are with the property at this point.
I had one question about your heavy industrial people. Are they do we get a tax benefit for having that kind of company in town? Or are they just gonna tear up the roads and we don't get anything?
Well, I believe rentals are taxed. So there would be taxes, there would be some sales tax on that.
It could be similar to the rail yard over there, because they weren't gonna supply any kind of tax money to the city and tear up the roads and wipe out the neighborhood. Okay.
Anything else, commissioners? Okay, with that being said, we will adjourn the meeting at 8:30.